Hi, I'm Alicia Sgambati, and I'm an early childhood special education major, and today I'm going to be talking about logical consequences. For logical consequences, I'm talking about consequences for a student who is acting out in class, isn't doing what they're supposed to be doing, and just making them have a consequence that is relatable to what their behavior is and isn't too extreme. So I took the class survey, and I had 16 responses as of last night. And I took some of the things why you got recess off, and some of it was because you couldn't pronounce a word right, or you played a video game on the computer, and then you didn't complete your homework, and all of that resulted in recess off, and then majority of the class did have recess off. So, show of hands, do you really think recess should be taken away for all of those things? No. So I'm just going to talk about 3 things that should be different. And just a little bit about recess. Recess is not a privilege. Kids should have recess because they're up and going, and they're just supposed to get their energy out. And like Monica said, they shouldn't be sitting all day. So how do we actually discipline them? Also, it's part of the responsive classroom, like Monica talked about. And you just have to learn how to respond appropriately to their misbehavior. So the first one is you break it, you fix it. Basically, you take responsibility for your actions. I have an example. Alexa walks by Tom's building blocks and bumps the tower with her hip. She will apologize to Tom, then help pick the blocks up, and then help rebuild the tower. So basically, you're just teaching the students to take responsibility for their actions and not make a huge deal about the blocks breaking. You just help pick them up and you go on with your day. The second one is a positive time out. Loss of privilege. So this is basically when you're taking something away, but you're not taking away recess. You're taking something that is better for the child and won't affect them throughout the day. So the one example I have is Dan is the class line leader, but decides to run in the hallway. So he lost his privilege of being line leader for the day, and then someone else will have the responsibility. Later, the teacher will check in with Dan to make sure he remembers and understands the expectations for walking in line. So you have to make sure they know the expectations, because if they don't, then they will get in trouble for their actions, and that's not fair to them. And they should be, so taking this away would be way better than taking 5 minutes or 10 minutes off recess when they can just go off and blow off that steam for setting the bad example in the first place. And the third one is a positive timeout. Most of the time when you think of a timeout, you think of a little girl or boy in the corner just crying and sobbing because they did a bad thing. And we normally think of it as a negative thing. Like, I know in class, if anyone sees someone in timeout, the kids are like, ooh, like they did something bad, like you should have. I talk with my hands too much. So you always think like it's a bad thing. So the example I have is Dan is in the class. Oh my goodness. So Mark disrupts class, but no. Yeah. Mark disrupts class by calling out answers without raising his hand. The teacher will send him to the timeout place. There he will calm himself down by using self-calming techniques used in class, then will return back to his seat. This timeout seat should actually be used every day. At least one student a day should go in this timeout seat. And that way it's more positive. It's just a time to relax and time to think about your actions. And then it'll eventually become a positive thing, like, oh, like I want to go in the chair so I can feel better about everything that I'm doing. So in conclusion, I know recess has always been taken away for years. I would get recess off because I didn't do my homework. But when you think about some of the consequences, like that kid could have not done homework because he was too worried about going to his job or his little siblings because his parents can't afford to give them food. And you just have to think about the home life and why they're acting that way. So taking away something fun isn't always the best choice. So I just want those 3 consequences. There's obviously you have to be more flexible in how you do the consequences. I just wanted to talk about those 3 because they're used the most in a responsive classroom. and I think it's the best way possible to have logical consequences and be fair to each child. Thank you.